The Space Invaders by Jeffrey Matthews. One. I am Omega. Varon pushed his way through the thick, wet grass of the swamp. Behind him, he heard the sound of loud voices. He tried to go faster, but the thick grass held him back. He had to push his way through it step by step. Varon had come about 3 kilometers from the Xeron strongroom, and he was very tired. The first part of Varon's plan had been successful. He had got into the strongroom deep under the ground. He had found the crystal, and he had got out again. He had succeeded in stealing the most valuable crystal in the universe, and no one had seen him. But the second part of his plan had gone completely wrong. The guards on the planet Xeron had found his spaceship. Varon had been told that only the strongroom on Xeron was guarded, but now he knew that was wrong. There were guards all over the planet. The guards had been waiting for him when he got back to the spaceship, and now they were chasing him, and there was no way he could escape. Varon pushed his way through the grass and fell into a pool of dirty green water. The shouts were coming closer. He had to keep moving. Varon pulled himself slowly to his feet. His face, hands, and overalls were covered in thick green mud. Varon wiped his hands on his overalls and felt in his pocket. The small, square box was still there. And in the box there was the Xeron crystal. The crystal would make him rich, very, very rich. But first he had to get back inside his ship. There was no other way he could escape from Xeron. He now moved out of the long, thick grass. He was standing on harder, drier ground. There were some thick bushes in front of him. Behind him there was the swamp and the guards who were chasing him. Varon hurried towards the thick bushes. I must get back to the spaceship, Varon thought. I'll have to find some way of tricking the guards. I can't escape from Xeron if I can't get back to the spaceship. Varon took 2 steps forward into the bushes. Suddenly he stopped. He knew he was not alone. He dropped down on one knee. There was somebody near him. His hand reached for the laser gun on his belt. Do not touch your weapon, said a soft voice. The voice spoke from behind a bush. Varon turned towards the voice and pulled his gun from his belt. He pointed the laser gun at the bush and pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. Varon pressed the trigger again. Again, nothing happened. The quiet voice spoke once more. Your gun cannot be used. Put it back in your belt. You will not be harmed. Varon lowered his hand, but did not put the gun back in his belt. He rose slowly and took a step towards the bush. You are not permitted to move any nearer, said the soft, quiet voice. It was a strange voice, neither friendly nor unfriendly. Varon raised his foot to take another step towards the bush, but he couldn't move his leg forward. He tried and tried to move his leg, but it would not move. He could move backwards, but he could not go nearer the bush. Who are you? Varon asked. What do you want from me? I want to help you, Stefan Varon, said the voice. You know my name, said Varon in surprise. No one on Xeron knew him. Yes, I know your name, and I know what you do, and where you come from, and why you are here. I know everything. I am Omega. The leaves of the bush were moved slowly to one side. A tall figure stood in front of Varon. The figure was made of metal. Its face was neither friendly nor unfriendly. It didn't have a nose, mouth, eyes, and ears like a human. It was a robot. Varon was very surprised. He knew that the guards on Xeron did not use robots. He knew there were no robots on Xeron. Or was he wrong again? A robot was standing here in front of him. What do you want from me? Varon asked once again. The robot did not reply. It seemed to be listening to something. Its head moved round to the right. Varon heard the voices of the Xeron guards. "He's over there!" a voice shouted. "Near those bushes!" Varon turned to the left and began to run. Omega raised one arm and pointed it at Varon. A bright red light came from the metal arm and covered Varon's body. The red light quickly faded. When the Xeron guards reached the bushes, they found nothing. Varon and Omega had disappeared. Two. On the spaceship. Varon opened his eyes and looked around. He was lying on a metal bunk in a small room. The bunk was fixed to a metal wall. "The Xeron guards have caught me," he thought. "I'm in prison." There was a small screen in the metal wall opposite the bunk. Varon got up and pressed a switch. The screen lit up and a picture appeared. Outside there were thousands and thousands of stars and planets. The biggest was a large circle of bright yellow light. Varon had seen the same yellow light when he was coming towards Xeron in his spaceship. Now he was looking at the planet Xeron from space. A short time ago, he'd been standing in a swamp on its surface. "I'm in a spaceship," Varon said to himself. "And it's not my spaceship. But how did I get here?" Then he remembered the Xeron guards who'd been chasing him. And he remembered Omega. "The robot has teleported me here," he said to himself. "But what about the Xeron crystal? Have I still got it?" Quickly he felt in his pocket for the small box. It was still there. He opened the box and looked at the red crystal lying inside. He was lucky. No one had searched his pockets. No one had taken his precious crystal. Varon looked around the room for a hiding place. There was no furniture, only the metal walls and the metal bunk. There was the small visual display screen in one wall, and above the bunk there was a small air vent. The air vent was covered with a metal grill. Varon took a small metal tool from his pocket. He pointed the instrument at the edge of the grill and pressed a button. There was a humming noise. Varon pointed the tool at the grill and moved his arm round slowly in a circle. After a few seconds, he reached up and carefully lifted the grill away from the air vent. He took the box with the crystal in it from his pocket and placed it carefully inside the vent. He put the grill back in place. He used the instrument again. In a few seconds, the grill was firmly fixed back to the wall. There was no door in the room, but this did not trouble Varon. He pointed the metal tool at the wall between the visual display screen and the bunk. He pressed the button. Nothing happened. Then he turned round and pointed at the other wall. He pressed the button again, and this time there was a soft sliding noise. Part of the wall slid to one side. Varon had opened the door. The corridor outside the room was long and dark, but there was a light at one end. Very quietly, Varon moved down the corridor towards the light. The light was coming from an open door. Varon stopped at the side of the door and carefully looked inside. It was the control room of the spaceship. There was someone standing inside near the open door. Quickly, Varon moved back and stood against the metal wall of the corridor. A woman's voice said, "It was a mistake to bring him up here to the ship." "Mistakes are made by humans. I do not make mistakes," said a quiet voice. Varon knew the voice immediately. It was Omega's voice. "You have made a mistake," the woman repeated angrily. She said each word sharply and coldly. Varon very slowly moved back towards the open door. He looked carefully into the control room. He saw Omega standing in front of the controls of the spaceship. The woman was standing looking at Omega angrily. She was young, about 25, and she had long, bright red hair. "You must send this man back to Xeron immediately," said the woman. "I cannot do harm to a human being," Omega replied quietly. "If I send the man back to Xeron, he will be killed by the guards. I cannot send him back. Varon smiled. He didn't want to go back to Xeron. But you must obey my orders, said the woman. That is correct, said Omega. Then I order you to send this man back to Xeron. Omega stood quietly at the controls of the spaceship. He didn't do anything. Obey my order immediately, shouted the woman. Teleport this man back to Xeron. I do not understand your order, said Omega quietly. It is a simple order, said the woman angrily. Send him back to Xeron. The woman now turned towards the robot. Varon could see she was very angry. Her eyes were bright and hard. She'd raised her arms and her hands were tightly closed. Your order is not simple. It does not make sense. I cannot obey it. Omega's voice was quiet and soft. Why not? Varon is a human being, that is correct, said Omega. The woman agreed. I cannot harm a human being. If I send him back to Xeron, he will die. Therefore, I cannot send him back. I cannot obey your order. Good, thought Varon to himself. He didn't want to go back to Xeron to die, but he did want to go back to Earth. And this spaceship could take him there. He had to find a way to get control of the spaceship. Varon started to move back away from the open door. Stay where you are, said a man's voice behind him. Do not move. Varon felt cold metal touch the back of his neck. He knew that the man was pointing a laser gun at his head. He stood very still. Three thieves. Raise your hands, said the man behind Varon, and walk slowly into the control room. Varon obeyed the man's order. Now sit down on that seat, said the voice, and do it slowly. Varon stopped in front of the seat. He slowly turned round and sat down. Now Varon could see the man. He was tall, and his black hair was cut short. What are you doing, Garth? Asked the woman. Why have you brought that man in here? Garth stood back against the wall. He held his laser gun loosely, but it was pointing straight at Varon's head. Varon knew that Garth could kill him easily, and that he would enjoy doing it. I did not bring him here, Miranda, Garth replied. I found him standing outside the door. He was listening to you and Omega. But how did he get out of the room? Asked Miranda. I closed and locked the door. No one can open the door from the inside. I can get out of any room if I have the right tool, said Varon. He smiled at the woman. She looked beautiful, but she didn't smile back at him. You're a fool, Miranda, said Garth. You did not search him. Do it now. Miranda walked behind the seat Varon was sitting on. She leant forward and searched his pockets. She took out the metal tool and handed it to Garth. Garth looked at it carefully. You're right, Garth said to Varon with a cold smile. You can get out of any room if you have a tool like this. It's a sonic key. It can open almost anything. Now, why do you need a tool like this? For my work, replied Varon. What is your work? Asked Garth. He was still smiling, but it was not a friendly smile. Varon did not reply. Garth spoke to Omega. Who is this man? He ordered sharply. Tell me what he was doing on the planet Xeron. Omega was standing quietly at the controls of the spaceship. He didn't reply for a few seconds. Then he spoke. Varon is a thief. The Xeron guards were chasing him, came the quiet reply. Why were the guards chasing you? Garth asked Varon. Your friend knows everything, replied Varon. Ask him. Omega is not a friend of ours, said Miranda. He is a robot. I know that, said Varon. But a robot can still be a friend. He must be a friend. He's controlling your spaceship. This is not their spaceship, said Omega. And I am not their friend. Omega is right as usual, said Garth with a sharp laugh. The owner of this ship was his friend. Unfortunately, we had to leave him on Earth when we stole the ship. You did not leave him on Earth, said Omega in his quiet voice. You killed my master when you stole this spaceship. And we found out how to control you, said Garth in a cold, hard voice. Now you must obey our orders. We are your masters. Omega was silent. That's interesting, Varon thought to himself. If I can learn how to control Omega, I can make him fly the ship back to Earth. I must watch the robot carefully. Varon looked at Garth and Miranda. The woman was beautiful, but her eyes were hard and cruel. "Why did you steal this spaceship?" asked Varon. "Because we needed it," replied Miranda. "We had to leave Earth quickly. We were being chased by the Earth police." "Why were they chasing you?" asked Varon. He was interested now. "Because we succeeded in stealing the most valuable thing on Earth," Miranda said quickly. Her eyes were bright with joy. Varon laughed loudly. "Then you're both the same as me. I'm a thief too. We're 3 thieves together." "We're not the same as you," said Miranda coldly. "We're successful thieves. We only steal things of great value. What can you steal on Xeron? It is a poor planet. There is nothing to steal on Xeron. Everyone knows that." "Yes, Varon," said Garth. "We are not the same as you. We are successful thieves." They both laughed. "They're very stupid," thought Varon to himself. "They don't know the secret of Xeron. They don't know that a Xeron crystal is the most valuable thing in this universe." Then Omega spoke quietly. He stood at the controls of the spaceship with his back towards the 3 humans. "Varon is exactly like you." Garth stopped laughing. He turned sharply towards the metal figure. "You are wrong, Omega." "I am never wrong," was Omega's reply. "And I can prove that Varon is the same as you." "I hope he isn't going to tell them about the Xeron crystals," Varon thought to himself. "Tell Varon why you and Miranda left Earth," Omega said. "You say you know everything," said Garth to Omega in a cold voice. "You tell him why we left Earth." "They stole the newest and most powerful computer on Earth," said Omega in a quiet voice. "They stole it, but the Earth police discovered that they were the thieves. They had to escape, and so they stole this spaceship." "The most powerful computer on Earth?" said Varon. "Then you're rich, very rich." "They are not rich yet," continued Omega. "They had to hide the computer on Earth. It is still on Earth." "So Garth and Miranda stole the computer, but they've not sold it yet," said Varon with a laugh. "The computer is hidden safely," said Miranda angrily. "No one can ever find it. It will be there when we get back to Earth." "There are many people who want this powerful computer," said Garth. "And when we sell it, we will be rich. We will be the richest people on Earth." For the first time, Omega turned away from the controls. He looked at Garth and Miranda. "Yes, you will both be rich when you get back to Earth," Omega said. "But first, you must get back there. And that is why you are both the same as Varon. He too is rich, much richer than both of you, but he too must get back to Earth." Miranda and Garth looked at Varon with great interest. He was richer than they were. What did he have which made him so rich? "4. You need Varon's help." There was silence on the spaceship. Omega was standing quietly at the controls again. Varon was thinking about how he could learn to control Omega. Miranda and Garth were thinking about what Omega had told them. Varon was richer than both of them. Miranda was the first to speak. "So we all want to go back to Earth," she said. "Then let's go there. Omega, take us back to Earth now." Omega pushed switches on the control panel. A low noise filled the room. "Stop," said Garth sharply. "Stop, Omega. We cannot go back to Earth yet." Omega pulled back the switches and the noise faded away. "You are stupid, Miranda," said Garth. "We have traveled millions of kilometers through space. We have been running and hiding from everyone for a long time now. But we can't go back to Earth yet. First, we must make sure that our plan has worked." "Plan?" asked Varon. "What's your plan?" "It's simple," replied Garth. "When we stole the computer, we knew that the Earth police were following us, so we stole this spaceship, the fastest spaceship that has ever been built." "The fastest and most powerful," added Omega. "When we left Earth, we flew towards the moon," continued Garth. "The police ships were far behind. We fired a small missile at the surface of the moon. By the time it exploded, we were thousands of kilometers away." "But what was the plan?" asked Varon. "The police saw the missile explode," explained Garth. "We hope they will believe that this ship crashed on the moon. Then they will think we are dead, and they will forget about us." "A clever plan," said Varon. "But has it worked?" "It's time to find out," said Miranda. "We've been hiding for long enough. Omega, find out if our plan has worked." Omega moved to one side of the control panel. He stood in front of a large white screen. He placed his arms on the controls at each side of the screen. Bright lights, red and green and blue, flashed across the screen. There was a humming noise. After a few moments, the bright lights faded away and the noise stopped. There was silence. Omega took his arms away from the control panel. He turned slowly towards Garth and Miranda. "The Earth police have stopped looking for you," he said quietly. "They believe that this ship crashed on the moon. They think that the ship was completely destroyed and that both of you are dead." Miranda laughed with joy. "The plan has worked!" she cried excitedly. "Now we can go back to Earth and get the computer." "But what about him?" asked Garth, pointing at Varon. "Take me back to Earth with you," said Varon. "I have some business there." "I'm sure you have business there," said Garth. "But I think you've forgotten something." "What's that?" asked Varon. "You are the only person who knows that we are still alive," answered Garth. "You are the only person who knows we have this ship. If we take you back to Earth, you could tell the police. They will pay a big reward." "A big reward?" said Varon with a laugh. "Haven't you forgotten something?" "Tell me what I have forgotten." "You've forgotten what Omega has told you," replied Varon. "When I get back to Earth, I will be richer than both of you. I don't need any reward from the police." "You won't be richer than us," said Garth in a harsh voice. "You will never get back to Earth. I'm going to kill you now." Garth pointed his laser gun at Varon's head. "Don't kill him," said Miranda suddenly. Her eyes were shining with greed. "First, find out what he's got. Why will he be richer than both of us?" "I don't believe Omega," said Garth. "It's impossible. There's nothing to steal on Xeron." Garth put his fingers to the trigger of the gun, but he couldn't close his fingers. Omega's arm was pointing at Garth. "You must not kill this man," said Omega. "You must ask him to help you. You need his help." "Help?" asked Miranda sharply. "What help?" "If Varon does not help you, you will never get back to Earth."